In 1961, the world celebrated Yuri Gagarin as the first human in space, but according to declassified documents and intercepted radio transmissions, he wasn't the first. He was just the first to survive. Between 1957 and 1961, at least 7 Soviet cosmonauts may have died in secret missions that Russia refuses to acknowledge. Their names were erased from history. Their families were silenced. Their deaths were covered up. This is the story of the Lost Cosmonauts, the men and women who may have reached space before anyone else, but never made it home. And the evidence suggests the Soviet Union knew they wouldn't. To understand why cosmonauts might have been erased from history, you need to understand what was at stake during the space race. October 4th, 1957. The Soviet Union launched Sputnik, the first artificial satellite, and shocked the world. America, which believed it was technologically superior, suddenly found itself losing to communist Russia. The space race wasn't just about exploration. It was about proving which system, capitalism or communism, was superior. It was about military dominance, nuclear capability, and global prestige. Losing wasn't an option. Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev understood this. He pushed his space program to achieve firsts at any cost. First satellite, first animal in space, first human in space, first spacewalk. The propaganda value was enormous, but there was a problem. Soviet rocket technology in the late 1950s was primitive, unstable, and incredibly dangerous. Their rockets exploded regularly. Safety protocols were often ignored in the rush to beat America. And according to researchers, whistleblowers, and intercepted radio transmissions, some cosmonauts paid the ultimate price and were erased from history to hide the failures. The question isn't whether the Soviet space program had failures. It's whether they were willing to sacrifice lives and hide the evidence to maintain their image of superiority. The most compelling evidence comes from 2 Italian brothers, Achille and Giovanni Giudica Cordiglia, amateur radio enthusiasts who, in the late 1950s, built a listening station to intercept Soviet space transmissions. What they recorded was chilling. In November 1960, they picked up what sounded like an SOS signal in Morse code coming from a Soviet spacecraft in distress. The transmission repeated for hours, then went silent. Russia never acknowledged any mission during that time. In May 1961, just weeks after Gagarin's successful flight, the brothers recorded a transmission that would haunt them forever. A female voice, speaking in Russian, clearly in distress. The woman reported increasing heat inside the capsule. Her breathing became labored. She said the spacecraft was tumbling out of control. And then, after several minutes of agony, her voice went silent. The brothers claimed this was a cosmonaut burning up on re-entry, a woman whose mission was never officially acknowledged. In February 1961, they recorded another transmission, a man's voice breathing heavily, saying, "I feel hot. I can see a flame. I feel hot." Then nothing. The Giudica Cordiglia brothers recorded at least 9 transmissions between 1960 and 1964 that suggested cosmonauts in distress or dying in space. Russia dismissed all of them as hoaxes or misidentifications. But here's the problem. Many of the transmissions contained accurate technical details about Soviet spacecraft that weren't publicly known at the time. The brothers would have needed inside knowledge to fake them convincingly. And they weren't the only ones hearing these signals. Other listening stations in Europe reported similar intercepts. Former Soviet engineers have since admitted that multiple secret missions failed catastrophically in the early space program. So who were these lost cosmonauts? Researchers have compiled a list of names based on leaked documents, testimonies, and evidence of people erased from official records. Alexei Ledovsky, a Soviet Air Force pilot who allegedly flew a suborbital mission in 1957, before even Sputnik launched. He supposedly died when his capsule failed to separate from the rocket. His name appeared in some early Soviet space documents, then vanished. Sergei Shibarin, listed as a cosmonaut trainee in early program rosters, then removed without explanation. According to some sources, he died during a high-altitude test flight in 1958, Andrei Mitkov, another trainee who disappeared from records. Rumors suggest he died during a centrifuge test that went catastrophically wrong. Ivan Kachur allegedly died in a pressure chamber accident in 1957, but some researchers believe he was on a secret test flight that exploded on the launch pad. Alexei Grachiov, supposedly killed in a fire during a training exercise, though some speculate it was a cover story for a failed launch. Pyotr Dolgov. This one is partially confirmed. He died during a high-altitude balloon jump in 1962, essentially a test for spacesuit systems, but his death was kept secret for years. And then there's Ludmila, no last name, just Ludmila, the female voice the Judica Cordiglia brothers recorded in May 1961. If she existed, Russia has never acknowledged her. Here's what makes this even more disturbing. Researchers have found Soviet-era photographs where cosmonauts have been literally airbrushed out. People who were standing in group photos one year are mysteriously gone in later versions of the same photo. This was standard Soviet practice. If someone fell out of favor, or if their existence became inconvenient, they were erased, not just from photos, but from records, archives, and history itself. So what does Russia say about all this? The official position has always been clear. Yuri Gagarin was the first human in space, period. There were no secret deaths, no erased cosmonauts. The Lost Cosmonauts theory is Western propaganda designed to discredit Soviet achievements. And to be fair, some of the skepticism is warranted. The Judica Cordiglia recordings have never been fully authenticated. Audio experts have raised questions about whether the voices could have been actors or misidentified transmissions. Some of the names on the Lost Cosmonaut lists were real people who died in accidents, but not in space. They died in training, which is tragic, but not a conspiracy. And Russia did eventually acknowledge some failures. In 1960, a rocket explosion killed over 100 people at the Baikonur Cosmodrome, including the head of the Soviet missile program. That was kept secret for decades, but was finally admitted. But here's the thing. Even the skeptics acknowledged that the Soviet space program was incredibly dangerous, rushed, and secretive. Cosmonauts were expendable. Safety was secondary to propaganda victories. Sergei Korolev, the chief designer of the Soviet space program, was known for pushing launches forward even when engineers warned of catastrophic risks. He was under immense political pressure to beat the Americans at any cost, and we know for certain that Russia erased people from history. After the fall of the Soviet Union, archives revealed thousands of doctored photos, falsified records, and people who had been unpersoned for political reasons. So the real question isn't whether Russia was capable of erasing cosmonauts from history. They absolutely were. The question is whether they did. We may never know the full truth about the lost cosmonauts. Soviet-era archives remain partially classified. Key documents were destroyed. Witnesses have died. But in 2011, something interesting happened. A Russian investigative journalist named Yaroslav Golovanov published previously classified documents showing that at least 3 cosmonauts died in training accidents that were covered up for decades. Not in space, but the culture of secrecy was real. And in recent years, some former Soviet space officials have admitted off the record that there were incidents in the early days that were never made public. What's clear is this: the space race was far more dangerous than either side wanted to admit. Astronauts and cosmonauts were test pilots willing to risk everything for their countries. Some of them didn't make it, and in the Soviet system, failure had to be hidden. Whether cosmonauts actually died in space before Gagarin, or whether they died in ground tests and training, the tragedy is the same. These were brave people who gave their lives for exploration and were erased because their deaths were politically inconvenient. Today, space exploration has become safer. International cooperation has replaced secrecy. The International Space Station represents what happens when nations work together instead of competing. But the Lost Cosmonauts remain a haunting reminder of what happens when politics matters more than human life. Somewhere in declassified Soviet archives, there may be names we'll never know. Faces that were erased from photographs. Stories that were buried. And if they existed, they deserve to be remembered. Not as propaganda failures, but as pioneers who paid the ultimate price for humanity's journey to the stars. The Lost Cosmonauts mystery remains one of the darkest chapters in space history. Were they real or just Cold War legends? The evidence is compelling, but the full truth may never emerge. What do you think? Did Russia erase cosmonauts who died in secret missions? Or is this just conspiracy theory? Let me know in the comments. If you want more cosmic mysteries and space secrets that history tried to hide, subscribe to Cosmic Enigma Mysteries. We're uncovering the truth, one mystery at a time. Next time, we're investigating the Black Knight satellite, the mysterious object that's been orbiting Earth for 13,000 years. You won't want to miss it.